Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value, hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today, we're going to talk about we're going to answer some patron questions. Okay? So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's answer the biggest questions in audio. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. We have, I think, over 480 videos. Okay? Lots of stuff. Turntables, amps, DACs, headphones, just about everything. We have a lot of fun here. Don't take ourselves too seriously. So, consider subscribing, like this video. If you don't like it, then you can take your like away. First question from Victor P., one of my patrons, longtime patron. Victor wants to know, I think there's some assumptions in this question. Why do open baffle speakers generally sound better than traditional box speakers? So at least he put generally in there. I don't know if they do, Victor. First of all, I don't have a ton or any experience with open baffle speakers. But I think this question is an interesting one because some people swear by open baffle speakers. Other people who have listened to open baffle speakers, most of their speakers are box speakers. I think if you look at sales, or even anecdotally, box speakers are overwhelmingly more popular than the open baffle speakers. Either the customers are completely ignorant that open baffle speakers exist, or the distributors, the retailers, don't offer open baffle speakers. But there's a reason why. It could be profit margins. Maybe box speakers are way more profitable. Could be a variety of things. I do have an opportunity to get a pair of Magnepan LRS in, and I'm really interested in hearing those. But I've also heard a couple of things. And this is a overarching broad statement. A lot of times, open baffle speakers don't do a great job of bass impact unless there's just huge woofers. And multiple ones at that. Now we have to ask ourselves, if an open baffle speaker sounds better than a box speaker, would it sound better if it had the same number of drivers? Could I get the same amount of bass out of an open baffle speaker with two 12-inch woofers as I do out of a box speaker with one 6.5-inch woofer? Then we have room considerations. Because if you have an open baffle speaker, the prevailing thought process is that you need some space behind the speaker and space away from the sidewalls. In many cases, an open baffle speaker won't fit into everybody's lifestyle. We don't all have the room for an open baffle speaker. There's zero chance I could have an open baffle speaker in my house, simply because of the kids, my family, and the way that we live within the house. People would be tripping over some giant obelisk in the middle of the living room at midnight when they're going to the refrigerator. So they're not practical for me. And I don't know if they sound better. Do you think they sound better? If you have experience with open baffle speakers, put it in the comments. A, do they sound better? B, are there placement limitations? What does your room have to look like to really get the most out of an open baffle speaker? How big do the open baffle speakers have to be to get an appreciable amount of bass out of them? I think it comes down to cost. And even with cost, there's a reason why there's more box speakers out there. For sure. It's an interesting question. I don't know if they do sound better. I'm willing to bet that a similarly priced box speaker is probably almost always going to outperform a similarly priced open baffle speaker. And you can talk about the Magnepan LRS and stuff like that, but you also have to consider how much electronics, how much power that needs. I still think box speakers are a much higher value than open baffle. Could be wrong. I need to get a pair of open baffle speakers in that are $500 though. Okay? Not happening, right? I've got some $500 box speakers that sound pretty darn good. Stevie D, better known as Iggy. Not a lot of question marks in this, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. Speaker placement in regards to listening position, room size, and placement of associated equipment, component racks, blah, 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 furniture placement, placed in front of the listening position. Good question. There's some more questions about speaker placement. So there's a prevailing thought process of the equilateral triangle, which means The speakers, if they're 5 feet apart, you should sit in the middle 5 feet away from each speaker if you can. Now, does it really matter down to the nth degree? No, it doesn't. There's also a prevailing thought process that your speakers should be a third of the way from the back wall. So if your room is 12 feet, then your speakers should be maybe 4 feet away from the wall, things like that. And either the same amount of distance from the side walls or a little bit different. I don't know if you want to have complete symmetry from the rear wall to the side walls. As far as stuff in front of the speakers, yeah, probably don't have a couch right in front of the speakers. But nobody has a perfect room. Frankly, in my living room, I have one of those L type of couches, the big ones. And part of the couch actually gets not right in front of the left speaker, but it actually gets a little bit in front of the left speaker. I don't think it makes a huge difference. Some people will go crazy when it comes to speaker placement, stuff that's in your room, and things like that. Here's my takeaway. You may be able to get better sound if you arrange your room just perfectly. But if you're doing that, then just get a dedicated listening room. Pick a room in your house if you can, if it works out that way, and if you have that luxury, pick a room you can in the house, and then set it up exactly how you want to, and then play around with that placement. Because just like open baffle speakers, speaker placement really comes down to what is the best for the family. And if you start to play around with it, if you pull speakers out further from the wall and you get a little bit into them, you can improve the sound stage. What I would do is just put speakers on stands, and for run-of-the-mill listening, keep them, 16 inches or whatever you can away from the rear wall. And if you want to jazz up the soundstage, then just pull them out into the room and kind of have the little marks on the floor where you can put them. There are some rules of thumb to use for speaker placement and furniture around the room. Actually, furniture on the sides can do a couple of things. They can do diffusion. So they can provide, if you have first reflections and you have a bookshelf over there, that can actually break up those first reflections and be a good thing. A lot of people say that if you just have a regular furnished room, the need for room treatment is reduced. I'm sure that some room treatment could improve the sound a little bit, but most of the issues with rooms comes from the bass. So you need bass traps, but more importantly, you'd probably need some pretty heavy-duty DSP to actually tackle those bass issues. So what I would do is I would start off with the equilateral triangle. I would start off with trying to get the speakers a little bit from the back wall. Put them 5 feet apart or 10 foot apart, and then sit 10 foot back in the kind of the middle of there. And then start to play around with toe-in. Once you get somewhat of that equilateral triangle, you get some space from the rear wall and the side walls, then you can start tweaking things, but do it one at a time. So tweak toe-in, sit back, see if you like anything. Tweak bringing them out and moving yourself in a little bit. Move around the room and sit in different places, because you will hear different levels of bass depending upon where you're at in your room. And it's easier to move yourself than the speakers all the time. So there's no easy answer. There's no easy answer for any of these. Do what you can and what makes sense for your family and your living situation. But I wouldn't stress over it, because none of my rooms are perfect. And I believe I get great sound out of all of my rooms. Could it be better? Maybe. But that better maybe means 5% better or 10% better. I always think about getting the most out of a system for the least amount of time or effort. And maybe you get 10% more performance out of it, but is it worth all that time, all that effort, when you could be enjoying music the whole time? But start off with the equilateral triangle. Start off having some distance from the back wall and the side walls. And then do the opposite, actually. Some speakers are designed to go closer to a wall. I know it's shocking, but it's true. Okay, John S., one of my favorite patrons. They're all my favorite patrons, but John S. has been a big supporter of the channel from the beginning. John is the father of Rocktopus, and I love him. Okay, John has a pretty intense question. Where do you begin with the system? How do you even know you have an issue with your system? How do you know what the weak link could be? Maybe you don't have enough clean power for the speakers. Are the speakers bad and you don't know? So this is like the biggest question out there. And I think this is an important question, but I don't think this question matters nearly as much as we think it does. Because we're all gearheads, which means even if we don't hear a problem in our system, something about us makes us interested in all the new gear out there. And we like to buy gear. Sometimes buying the gear is more important than how it sounds for us, for some of us. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be watching my channel. Let's just identify that and understand that we, as a group of people, like to buy stuff. We're gearheads. There's nothing wrong with that. There's car gearheads. There's collectors of other things, tchotchkes, coins, stamps. We like hi-fi gear, and that's great. If you don't know you have a problem, though, then you don't really have a problem. What I would do, if you want to improve your system, is you got to tackle things one at a time. Because if you start to change multiple things within your system, then you don't really know if it was a problem or not, or if it was great or not. You can start with the speakers, you can start with the DAC, you can start with the amp. But whatever you do, stick with the rest of your system exactly how it is, and then start to change things out. Do some critical listening. And if you haven't heard a bunch of different systems, then it's going to be difficult. But for speakers, what you can do is if you have tone controls on your amplifier, you can boost the bass a little bit or reduce the treble or whatever. Make tiny little adjustments and sit back and say, do I like that sound? And if you do, then maybe look at speakers that have more of that characteristic. I think one of the things that everybody would enjoy is clarity in speakers. And you don't know if your speaker is not clear until you compare it to a speaker that is clearer. So that can be difficult. You also really don't know your speaker's signature or its flavor until you compare that speaker to other speakers. So whatever your budget is, I would start with one component. Can start with speakers first. Do as much research as you can. Find something most people agree is good, and then make sure they have a return policy. And buy it and listen to it. Do your own A/B testing, because nothing, no 1,000 reviews on one product is not going to mean anything until you put your ears on it and you compare it directly with something else that you have in your house, in your room, on your components. See if you like it. If you like it, keep it. Great. Sell your other speakers or keep them in reserve. If you don't like it, pack them up and send them back. Because in this day and age, without hi-fi stores, even with hi-fi stores, you go in there and you listen to something in a brick and mortar store, no way that's going to sound the same in your room. And we have a tendency, people in general have a tendency to be, ooh, that's sparkly, that's nice, ooh, I hear more on that speaker. And then always go for the speaker that's a little bit more lively on top. When you get it home, that might not be the sound that you like. So listening in your room, in your house, there's no substitute for that. You become the reviewer, you make the decision, and the only thing that you could be out, a little bit of money for a little while. But I personally would buy from a place that has a liberal return policy and offers return shipping, because you can do this a lot easier with components and bookshelf speakers. You start shipping tower speakers in and out, you better make sure that they offer free shipping on the way back. Otherwise, you could be stuck with a speaker that you don't like at all. And try to make a decision within the first 30 days. A lot of speakers are going to require, they say you need to break them in. So you need to run these things, maybe 24 hours a day for the first week or so, just to make sure they're broken in. Otherwise, you could be stuck with something that you don't like after it breaks in 3 years from when you started listening to the speaker. It's a long way to say, change one thing at a time, buy something that has a return policy, or something that you're getting such a ridiculous deal on in the used market that if you want to, you could probably sell it and get your money back. And then you make the decision. If you've narrowed it down to 2 products in the same category, speakers, amps, or whatever it is, and you can afford to buy both of those at the same time, and you can A/B those in your system, that's what I would do. But if you don't know there's a problem in your system, there's probably not a problem in your system. But if you still want to explore, because we're all gearheads, start with one thing, start to change that out, leave everything else the same. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Discord group, which we were in and hanging out in last night. Patreon-only Facebook group. We do Patreon giveaways. You can sign up for Amazon Music or Tidal Music. Tidal's running a deal right now. $3 for 3 months. I'll put the links in the description. Those are affiliate links, which means if you use them, I do get a commission on it. I don't know if I'll link anything. I have certain components that I do like, and those are in the description, which those are all affiliate links, or mostly affiliate links. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen. Maybe do some of these things I talked about today and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.